Officers, arrest this man! He's celebrating Christmas after I warned him not to!
What the fuck?
Now, this is the most ridiculous HOA power reach I have ever witnessed. And honestly, I'm still trying to figure out what celestial malfunction convinced Karen she could actually pull this off. I've lived in this HOA long enough to recognize when Karen is spiraling, but this particular episode felt like watching a slow-motion train crash you couldn't look away from. It's been 3 years since Ken, her exhausted, soul-drained husband, filed for divorce and somehow won custody of their kids so cleanly that even the court clerk reportedly blinked twice. Ever since then, Karen has been drifting through the neighborhood like a storm cloud with Wi-Fi access, sending complaint emails at 2 a.m. and holding emergency HOA meetings about imaginary violations. You could practically read her loneliness in the stiff way she marched around the subdivision. The only softness she had left in her life was her cat, a fluffy white diva she carried everywhere like a purse accessory. She named her Duchess because in Karen's mind, the cat had a higher social ranking than half the neighborhood. Duchess wasn't a pet. She was Karen's entire personality, her emotional anchor, the last thread holding her sanity together. Welcome to Prodigy Tales. Make sure you like and subscribe for your top-notch HOA drama. Then, everything collapsed on the 28th of November when Duchess died unexpectedly. For most people, grief brings reflection. For Karen, it brought a declaration of war. At the next HOA meeting, she marched in wearing all black like she was attending a royal funeral and announced Duchess's passing with dramatic pauses that lasted longer than some marriages. We nodded respectfully until she slammed her binder shut and announced something so outrageous the air left the room. In Duchess's honor, she proclaimed, absolutely no one in the neighborhood would be celebrating Christmas. No lights, no wreaths, no decorations, and definitely no Merry Christmas. Anyone who dared to say it, even accidentally, would be fined, heavily. Before we dive in deeply, let us know in the comments what country or which city you're watching this story from. We'd love to know how far this story travels. The room was so silent after Karen's announcement that you could have heard a snowflake land on a carpet. We honestly thought she was joking, grieving, or maybe testing out new material for a comedy show. But no, Karen was dead serious. She even pulled out a stack of pre-written violation slips, like she'd been preparing for this moment her entire life. The next few days felt like living inside a holiday dystopia. Neighbors tiptoed around like Christmas had become a crime, and somehow Karen's rule actually stuck for most people. As for me, not a chance. It was December, and by the 10th, I'd already started putting up decorations as I always did. Bright lights, a glowing reindeer, a wreath big enough to be visible from space. If Karen wanted a battle, I was ready. I still greeted my neighbors with cheerful Merry Christmas. Even though they responded like witnesses under interrogation, glancing around to make sure Karen wasn't hiding in a bush with her clipboard. That's when things spiraled. I received a $1,000 fine slipped under my door for unauthorized festive illumination. Before I could even roll my eyes, I got multiple $50 fines accusing me of continued use of the M-word. Apparently, Karen heard through her network of snitches that I'd been spreading holiday cheer. I ignored every fine with the same enthusiasm she ignored her ex-husband's restraining orders. Shockingly, most neighbors obeyed Karen's decree. No lights, no music, no holiday spirit. They didn't even respond to my greetings anymore, afraid Karen would materialize out of thin air like a gingerbread demon. By the 20th, my fines had reached $5,000 because I'd kept using Christmas hashtags in the community group chat. I didn't even say much, just tossed in a few festive emojis to watch Karen lose her grip on reality. Every time she texted back in all caps, I knew I had struck gold. It was the afternoon of the 25th of December, the real Christmas day, and despite Karen's desperate attempt to suffocate the holiday spirit out of the entire neighborhood, I was inside enjoying my hot cocoa and peace like a normal, functioning adult. Then I heard a strange scraping sound on my porch, the kind of noise that does not come from a delivery driver, but from someone who has fully committed to chaos. I stepped outside, and there she was, Karen, in all her unhinged glory, tearing through my decorations like she was competing in an Olympic sport nobody asked for. She kicked over my glowing reindeer, ripped garlands apart like they owed her money, and stomped on ornaments with a fury that could have powered a small village. But the part that nearly knocked the breath out of me was the gas can sitting right beside her. Karen had actually poured gasoline around my porch, shrubs, and walkway, clearly intending to turn my Christmas setup into a fireball of spite. Luckily for me, and unluckily for her, the snow had soaked everything enough that her lighter refused to cooperate. She flicked it repeatedly, muttering curses at the frozen ground like it had personally betrayed her. I stepped out fully and told her to leave my property before she embarrassed herself beyond repair, but Karen whipped around with the wild determination of someone who had lost every argument that month. She yelled that I owed every fine she'd ever given me and that she'd call the police if I didn't pay immediately. Then, to my absolute disbelief, she pulled out her phone and actually dialed them, still standing there with gasoline on her boots and a destroyed reindeer at her feet. She began rehearsing her victim monologue loudly, pacing in circles while clutching the empty gas can like it was Exhibit A in a courtroom she thought she would win. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't panic. I simply looked up at the CCTV camera above my door, its little red light blinking like a silent witness. Every second of her Christmas crime spree was recorded in perfect clarity, and she had no idea she was starring in her own downfall. The police took their sweet time getting to the neighborhood, probably because it was Christmas Day and they expected nothing more serious than noise complaints or burnt jollof rice emergencies. But when they finally rolled up, lights flashing across the snow, Karen straightened herself like she was about to receive a bravery award. She rushed toward them with dramatic urgency, clutching her gas-scented coat and pointing at me as if I were a fugitive on the run. She launched into her speech instantly, explaining how I had violated sacred community rules, how I had refused to honor Duchess's memorial protocol, and how I had shown dangerous levels of festive rebellion. The officers blinked, clearly trying to understand how a Christmas greeting turned into a crime scene. Karen kept going, layering lies like she was decorating a cake, insisting I had threatened her, sabotaged the HOA, and created a hostile Yuletide environment. When she finally paused for breath, the officers turned to me. Calmly, I gestured toward my porch and pulled out my phone. With one tap, I opened the CCTV footage. Their faces changed immediately. The video showed everything. Karen ripping decorations apart, stomping on ornaments, pouring gasoline like a budget movie villain, and clicking a lighter with enough determination to start a rebellion. The officers exchanged a look, then slowly turned back to Karen. Her confidence drained from her face as she realized the script was no longer in her hands. She tried to pivot, claiming she was performing a safety inspection and preventing excessive fire hazards. But the officers had already heard enough. They asked her to step forward. She panicked, backing away while insisting they were misunderstanding her heroic intentions. But facts were facts, and gasoline doesn't lie. Within minutes, the cuffs clicked, and Karen's holiday meltdown officially became a legal problem. The neighborhood watched from their windows as she was guided into the patrol car, still shouting about HOA regulations and unpaid fines that suddenly didn't matter anymore. I pressed charges for vandalism and trespassing, and for once, the HOA had nothing to say. Christmas lights still twinkled on my porch as the police drove away, and honestly, it was the brightest the neighborhood had felt all month. The end. Please like and subscribe for more HOA showdowns like this. Do you think she got what she deserves? Comment below.